In this depth that you speak of, there is no one. And it's possible to show up as silence, to show up as love. That's where this compassion is coming from. Yeah, I would love to continue this conversation from last week about movement and triggers. So, just looking at it from the standpoint of how a movement in someone else might trigger a movement in myself. And one that I'm very familiar with, just to start us off here, is when I notice someone moving towards. So, just to maybe give some context behind this, at the Lila School, we learn about three different types of movements. And to explain it in a very basic way, there's the movement towards, which is usually to seduce or get love from the outside, based in some feeling of self-hatred or worthlessness. There's the movement against, which is usually based in anger and to feel some sense of power. And there's the movement away, which is the one I'm most familiar with in myself, which is really about moving away in fear into the head to feel some sense of safety. And so my primary movement I've found is away. And when someone is moving towards, that's a big trigger point for me. And just to expose this initial feeling I get of it's like yucky. I don't know how else to describe it. I've had someone tell me before that the reaction I give sometimes looks like I'm in disgust. I'm embarrassed to say it, I'll be honest. It's not something I'm proud of, but that's kind of partly why I want to expose it and really come from a place of compassion because we all have these movements and we all get triggered. And so, yeah, that initial feeling is like, I want to run away. It triggers fear. Something about it makes me feel really uncomfortable. And so I'll move into my head and it might go into something like judgment.
Jonas, I wonder if I can add here, just for the context of our listeners, this context that this movement that you're describing that happens alongside fear, it's like a way that we all internally respond to an emotion like fear or a sensation like anger or worthlessness. It's kind of a movement that happens in reaction to or alongside something that's coming up.
Yes, definitely. What I've noticed is that it's a survival mechanism. And each of these movements, no matter which one it is really about control. So, with this feeling of fear, if I can move into my head and judge someone else or figure out what's going on, it gives me a sense of like control that I know what's going on because to feel afraid, it just feels really out of control and can feel really overwhelming. What I love is that this honesty right now about it creates space. I said I wanted to come from a place of compassion, and that's really actually what I feel in this space. It's actually bringing up an unexpected, um, like tenderness and vulnerability in myself right now, which of course is what's actually being avoided in the moment of moving.
Let's pause here. What if there's nowhere else to go from here? Tenderness. compassion.
I mean, it feels really good to pause here. I feel compassion for myself. I feel compassion for everyone. I feel compassion for the world, for humanity. It's like we're all really just trying our best to live a happy life in our own way.
Yeah. I notice how, we started recording with an intention to share something that's relevant and meaningful for both of us. And I had a different idea of how this conversation might go, and I feel that you might have as well. And just opening this conversation, telling the truth about how you move. Here we are in this wide experience of tenderness.
It points to the possibility of staying unmoving in the midst of a trigger and really feeling what's deeper.
The reflection that comes alive in hearing you say that is this grace of, at the same time, being available to learn that lesson of being unmoving in the midst of a trigger. But even that, falling away into this deeper experience, so that the one who learns the lesson doesn't need to remember anything. The depth is here.
Feels like really good news that depth is here no matter what, because, I'm talking about something that's really challenging for me. And maybe in this context of this conversation right now, it's easier, let's say, to be unmoving, to stay still and feel what's deeper. But in the moment of the trigger, it's a huge challenge. So to recognize depth is here feels very freeing. I love this possibility that is available to all of us. And it really does point back to identity. In that movement, there's this belief that there's a me and there's a someone else and they're doing this and I don't like that. And so I need to do this now. And, it's like a whole victimhood thing. But from here, in this depth that you speak of, there is no one. I can see through that fiction and it's possible to show up as silence, to show up as love. That's where this compassion is coming from. And who knows how that looks in each specific situation? I couldn't say.
And what I see in being able to see you visually is how quiet you become, not just in terms of speaking, but also your whole body language gets quieter.
I would just add in softer too.
Mm.
Another reflection that I've had is people telling me that I can be robotic or wooden or cold. I've gotten that before. And this feels like a melting where I really can be warmer, be softer. It feels good. It feels more natural.
I feel the simplicity of, you know, just a few minutes ago, you touched in on checking in with how movement might show up for you. And you slowed it down and exposed to yourself. Oh, this is how I'm moving. This is how it's a survival mechanism. I'm trying to get something. And what's underneath is this. And what's underneath, even deeper, if I don't move, is this.
So looking back on it now, it's like, okay, I spoke about safety because in that moment of being triggered, I felt afraid and overwhelmed. And so, of course, there's a movement towards safety. But now that we're exposing what's deeper, what was I really trying to be safe from? Compassion, love, softness, kindness.
And from my perspective, I feel the importance of this word control that you mentioned earlier. I'm making a fist as I do that because I relate to it in that way. It's a sense of trying to grasp and control and drive the bus.
Well, yeah, let's hear a little more about how you relate to it in terms of how this shows up for you.
Sure. So you introduced these three movements: moving towards, moving against, moving away. For me, I do all of these movements, but the one that is most familiar and the one that I go to most directly first is a movement against. And even just saying this word, it comes with a closed fist. Movement against. Usually it's really actually a movement against something internal. Could be a movement against a body sensation, movement against a thought, movement against myself. And I laugh because when I describe it this way, it seems quite silly to expose this very familiar egoic pattern because it's a movement of ego. It's not a movement of peace. It's a movement of me trying to get something that shows up as a closed fist or clenching or pushing internally in my own body and showing up that way. In my case, it's rare that I openly move against the outside world. And yet it also shows up that way, just in showing up as a clenched person. And what's coming alive as I describe this now is the awareness that to indulge in moving against anything, it gives me a surge of energy, a surge of inflation. There's a physiological experience of energy rising from the ground up through my chest and being held, which could be confused for a sense of personal power. And I say confused because it's not real. It doesn't actually give power, but it gives a sense of egoic power. I am someone who's driving the bus of life. I am someone who's in control. And yeah, there's like a puffing up around that. And also for me, I would also use the word safety. It feels safe to feel I'm in charge of my life and I'm doing it. And then however that expresses out in the world, it it's always about this clenching internally that we call moving against.
Hearing you speak brings up a reflection and a question for me. The reflection is that even as soon as you start talking about it, there's this sort of attraction or passion that you have about it that I feel and hear and see from you. So I don't know if you want to comment on that first before I ask the question.
Just yes. Yes. And this has come up. I feel like we've maybe talked about this before. It's like when you were speaking, I was in a really quiet internal place. But now I get to talk about this movement, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to puff up about how powerful I am. And that's the trap, is that it feels puffed up, like it feels in a way kind of good. But the truth is, this is also what I'm fighting against because it's a trap that has no meaning and is a lot of work to maintain. It takes so much energy to be moving against myself all the time. And it's painful when I expose that at its root, this puffing up is about clenching and pushing internally. It's not so tasty anymore. It's not so pretty anymore. The truth is an expression of, it's an expression of no to myself, an expression of no to everything. And not only is that so painful to say no to the whole of life, it's also very clearly not what I want this life to be about. I love life. And it's not really possible to be in contact with love when I'm heavily invested in pushing against myself, even a little bit, even a little bit. It's the opposite direction of love. It's not about dialing down the movement. It's not about finding the right channel of expression for the movement. It's about not moving, being what is unmoving.
Yeah, and being honest. Because just being honest about what I had reflected to you changed the whole thing. The more honest you were about it, the more your tone changed, your energy changed, everything changed.
You know, I want to add to this that there is a piece about, in describing the puffing up, there's an honesty about that as well. It's not like I was hiding it or even avoiding it, but to bring into the conversation the wider experience of what is that costing? That's really essential. And I say this because I recognize how that can be a trap, actually, is to, especially if we talk about the Enneagram, a trap of being able to describe how the movement works and being able to describe how that might translate into a particular Enneagram type. That's not what the Enneagram is for. That's not what this awareness of movement is about. It's a doorway in the context of being absorbed by what's true and what's bigger than all of that.
Yeah, by exposing the lie, you come to the truth. But it is a trap. Because you can expose it in a way where you are indulging it even further.
Yes. And so it's about having a wider lens, not stopping there, but asking what would be here if there was no movement? What is it like to be unmoving naturally? What is exposed here?
It feels like what we're exposing is actually ignorance, which is where the Enneagram starts with this core nine fixation that is ignoring. And in what you're calling being unmoving, for me, this is just pure presence, total awareness. And it's alive, it's dynamic, it's real, it's silent, it's loving. It's the point of life, really, to me.
I love to hear this reflection from you because when you ask this question about what's unmoving, what was exposed right away here was an experience that I might call discomfort or like a squirming sensation. And then to hear you describe this as presence, alive, all the words that you just used, I realize that this is also true. This exposed, squirming, discomfort is presence.
I really like bringing discomfort into this conversation. I heard someone say not long ago that as humans, we are really discomfort averse. And that really struck me because it is so true. All these patterns, all these movements, all of our unnecessary suffering really, if you boil it down, comes to not wanting to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I definitely feel resonance with that. I want to label something uncomfortable, and then it's an excuse to be like, well, I don't want to have to feel that. It's an excuse to look away or avoid or move against.
Yep, that's where my moving away comes from. Being terrified in the moment and like feeling that and not knowing what to do. I often describe that as feeling like I'm dying, like I'm being sucked away, like I'm being annihilated, and it's really uncomfortable. And so when we look at it from this context, it's like these uncomfortable feelings or sensations or experiences then control our life. Our actions follow it, our behaviors follow it, our decisions of how we live follow not wanting to feel uncomfortable. Isn't that crazy?
Our movements follow it. I'm uncomfortable. Now I'm moving.
It's so easy to make yourself a victim in that this situation or that person made me uncomfortable, and so screw you.
And let's add to this, I'm uncomfortable. I'm controlling, trying to control the experience in some way, being a victim of it.
Yeah. So it feels to me like a really potent inquiry to invite our listeners into to end this episode. To, in this moment right now, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on, what would it be like to just be unmoving right now, to say yes to whatever the internal experience is, to stop, and be quiet
internally.
to really just pause here for a second, to have a moment to internally be present with yourself, to connect with your heart.
It feels like connection is the natural expression of not moving.
As Maeve and I sit here silently in connection with one another, I can only feel this deep love. It's really beyond words, beyond anything I can describe. It feels so real and so true.
Silent.
Feels like a really beautiful way to end this episode and to end this first series of podcasts as we take a little break. I'm going to be going on retreat to Ashland, Oregon with the Leela School, and I can't wait. I feel so grateful because everything I've discovered, everything I've realized, everything we speak about in these podcasts is really because of those retreats, because of the teachers and the mentors and the community.
And the Sangha and the reflection of this wider possibility in the middle of everything that shows up.
So if you're listening to these podcasts, we consider you a part of that community and we thank you and we love you.
Yes, we love you and we would love to hear from you. If you have feedback or questions or realizations, we welcome you to reach out any way that you know how. Let us know.
Until next time,
Yes.
thank you, Maeve.
Thank you, Jonas.